My fiance left me the same week that my father disowned me. That's right. I'm turning 30 this summer, and I've never had a relationship last longer than about 2 years. I've struggled in relationships for my entire life, and well, of course, there are a lot of different things that factor into this. It always comes back to biphobia. Happy Pride Month, everyone. This episode is for all my fellow bisexual degenerates out there. What is up, my witches? Welcome to the Queer Soul Alchemy podcast, a supportive community helping queer folks to embrace their authentic selves by exploring yoga, astrology, and spirituality. I'm your host, Lee Davey. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host and favorite queer envy priestess, Lee Davey, your humble soul shepherd, your inner alchemy doula, your dad on vacation if your dad was a pagan bisexual degenerate. I've shared openly on the podcast before about being outed as bisexual at just 12 years old, before I was ready. This episode is going to be a bisexual story time in honor of Pride Month, and I'll be sharing about my personal experience with my own bisexuality. In this episode, you'll discover my theory on why everyone hates bisexuals. I'll walk you through my journey of unpacking internalized biphobia and learning how to ride the bi cycle with grace. But first, new episodes of this podcast drop every Wednesday, posted to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Please make an offering to the algorithm gods by leaving the show a like. Please subscribe so that we can continue to help your fellow queer spiritual seekers find this magic. And happy Pride Month from Queer Soul Alchemy, you guys. Please comment the name of your favorite pop diva or queer icon so that we can give these queens their flowers together, okay? And don't miss out on exclusive access to my free self-care resource guide, which I've specifically curated for you to support your journey with spirituality. To download this guide and be the first to know about upcoming queer yoga retreats and events, please sign up for our email newsletter at youareloved.one/pod. All right, y'all, let's get into it. So the bi cycle is a new concept I just learned that makes me feel so validated. It's basically the idea that our sexuality as bi people can fluctuate. Over time, we can be much more attracted to one gender and then much more attracted to another gender for a while, and it can fluctuate back and forth, which can be confusing, right? In a previous podcast episode, I shared that I was outed in middle school as bisexual, and I didn't even really know what that meant. I was definitely a virgin. I think this was even before my first kiss. And I had a friend group of emo kids, which I now realize that if you're from the Midwest, if you know, you know, being an emo kid was such a staple of Midwestern queer culture here, and really still is. So we would geek out on bands like My Chemical Romance, who are known for their gender nonconforming style and emotional emo music. Now that I look back on it, emo music is very campy, very rock opera, very queer. I had one female friend in particular that I do remember being attracted to, but we were only 12 or 13. Nothing ever happened between us. And again, I didn't know what a relationship was or anything. So when I got to high school, I started off dating boys, and I liked boys, but I hadn't yet felt a deep connection with one. Then a longtime female friend started pursuing me romantically, and that is what I consider to be my first love and my first real relationship. We dated throughout our junior and senior years, and I definitely was in love with her. I had virtually no interest in men while I was with her, and even though I was officially out, there was so much shame around even just holding my girlfriend's hand in public. Having her over to my house was extremely uncomfortable. I remember my mom crying and being upset multiple times just that we were there cuddling. And for those 2 years, my dad pretty much didn't talk to me. We were strangers that lived under the same roof, and he only broke the silent treatment in order to criticize or mock me or punish me. In addition to negative messaging from my parents, her parents, and other adults at our school, I had already internalized so much shame at that point for simply exploring my queerness. My girlfriend and I also didn't have a healthy relationship for many reasons, but internalized homophobia and growing up together in a homophobic world certainly added another layer of confusion to our trauma. The shame ended up being too much for me, and I didn't realize until much later how unhealthy the relationship actually was. I just thought that when you love someone, you're supposed to keep bending over backwards, trying to make things work with them. And when we graduated, I told her that it was over between us. Again, our relationship wasn't healthy, so there was the component of ending something traumatic, but then there was also the factor of me just being completely cut off from my emotions because of the internalized homophobia that I now realize I was dealing with, but at the time I didn't have words for it. I just felt shame. After that, I started dating men again almost immediately, and I had lost my virginity to her, but later that summer, I lost my heterosexual virginity, if you will, to a 21-year-old guy with a motorcycle who I dated briefly when I was 18. My ex-girlfriend and I took some space after breaking up, but then we were still good friends, and we had been friends from the 6th grade until when we started dating. So the transition was painful, of course, at first, but we ended up making it, and the friend group stayed intact for several years after that. On my first day of college, I met my college boyfriend when he was reading Stephen King on a bench, and I thought he was cute, and I sat next to him. He asked me to come and see his band play that Friday night, and the rest was history. We dated for about 2 years. And my sophomore year of college, my ex girlfriend and I were actually dorm roommates, and my boyfriend had basically joined our friend group. For the most part, he didn't mind that I was still best friends with my ex girlfriend and then actually living with her while dating him. But now I can totally understand why he would occasionally express feeling insecure about that and needing reassurance from me. But I really didn't feel that way about her at that point. My ex girlfriend and I were still close friends, but our relationship was definitely up and down, especially when we lived together. My boyfriend was over all the time, and there was another friend that was a lesbian who had shown interest in me, and I kind of had a crush back on her. So my boyfriend felt like we would be flirting in front of him, and honestly, we probably were. But I was like 19 at the time, and I'm a naturally flirty, open person. So from this, I started to discover that I am polyamorous because I was with a man that I loved dearly, but I still felt a desire to also explore with women. So we continued to date until I graduated. And if I was straight, I would have probably gotten married to him. Like if this was the 50s or 70s or even the 90s, I probably would have been married and had a couple of kids by now. But that wasn't what I wanted. And I'm so grateful to have grown up in a time where I actually have a choice in the matter. So I knew that I wanted to date around and that I was interested in men and women. And since I was also away from my parents and had moved out of my hometown to go to college, I felt like I finally had a little more space and freedom to explore. Now, I consider myself a very open minded person, and obviously I'm queer, but I never wanted to call myself bisexual. I've always identified more with the label pansexual because it includes trans and gender nonconforming people. And what's important is not a person's anatomy, but the way they carry themselves. Dating trans people and other non binary people is more of a recent experience for me. And I've been working through layers of internalized homophobia, then transphobia, and now biphobia because this shit runs deep, you guys. Give a thumbs up to the video if you agree, if you resonate with what I'm saying. When I was in college, I was dating a man, and I felt like I was too straight to be a part of LGBT community groups and clubs. Even though I had had a girlfriend for 2 years and fully knew that I was queer, I had broken up with my high school girlfriend largely out of shame. And when I started dating my college boyfriend, suddenly I had a relationship with my father again. Suddenly, my relationship with my mother was much less tense. And suddenly, I could walk down the street holding my partner's hand and didn't feel like everyone was staring at us and judging, and like maybe we were unsafe. And for a little while, it was really such a relief to have somebody protect me and to just play this socially prescribed role. I fell in love, and the first year of our relationship was great, but then the bi cycle turned and I was longing for that feminine energy again. So we did open up at one point and tried polyamory, but understandably, that wasn't what my boyfriend wanted long term. And besides, I really wanted to graduate from college and travel, and he wanted to graduate and settle down with a job and house. Over the years, I've come to the conclusion that being poly is my solution to the bi cycle. I find that if I'm with a partner that's a man, I inevitably also want to be with a woman and have that feminine energy around me. But if I am with a partner who is not a man, I inevitably want that masculine energy around me. And I already have a small dating pool because there's only a certain subset of people that would be open to a legitimate, committed relationship with somebody that is queer, non binary, and also polyamorous. Like, I love non-traditional relationships, but I live in Ohio, and a lot of people here still wrestle with conditioning from their family and our culture and base their dating decisions on who is socially acceptable for them as a partner. So ultimately, I just don't fit into the world because their world centers straightness. So those were my two formative relationships. Fast forward to after I broke up with the boyfriend, I continued to explore, hooking up and dating around with both men and women. When I was 21, I started dating men that were in their 30s. And looking back, I realized that with that age difference, they were taking advantage of me. And that was the beginning of a long string of relational traumas in my adult life. For the next about decade, I dated men and women, but nothing was ever committed. I always wanted a relationship, and I was always kind of looking for that feeling of safety, trust, and commitment again. But I was traveling a lot and not staying in the same place for more than a month at a time. And the people that I chased were free spirited, emotionally unavailable, and not looking for anything serious. So there was a ton of spiritual growth and just getting to know myself as a person during this time and learning who I am on my own outside of any influence. But there is still a lot of shame to unpack around my queerness. And there was a big part of me that felt like I had to completely leave Ohio in order to express that part of myself. So I lived in California and I was able to express and explore my queer side more there. Once I got my heart broken by a few women, I started realizing that I definitely lean homo-romantic. And even though I knew I was still sexually attracted to men, that bi cycle was spinning again. I got my heart broken because I was chasing emotionally unavailable women, so nothing ever ended up working out. And I also felt like I just didn't know what I was doing with women. I felt super shy around them, like an inexperienced teenager, and it must have showed because they weren't very interested in me. Basically, I came to the conclusion that if everybody I try to date is going to be emotionally unavailable, then I guess I should also be emotionally unavailable myself. For years, I alternated between looking for a relationship and avoiding them altogether. At that time in my life, my PTSD symptoms were the most severe, but I didn't even know that I had PTSD yet. I moved back to Ohio and tried more relationships with men that ended up being very traumatic, partly because they were unhealthy and partly because I was forcing myself to act monogamous and straight when I'm not. So I wasn't being authentic. After a particularly emotionally abusive and unhealthy relationship, I finally started going to therapy. Why do I keep having abusive relationships and getting hurt by people that don't actually care about me? I felt crazy, but I was actually dealing with severe PTSD symptoms, emotional flashbacks, panic attacks, chronic anxiety, and nightmares. Even though I felt incompetent with women, I always felt attracted to them and preferred to date them over men. But men are the ones who always showed attention and desire toward me. So men are who I ended up in relationships with. Plus, it's so much easier to present as straight in this world and access the privilege that comes from dating a man. I thought, if what I have to do to get love is be monogamous with a man and women don't seem interested in me anyway, then let's just try it out. And I did try several times, but I've never been able to be monogamous and feel good about it for an extended period. There is tangible social capital and privilege that comes from dating a man. And mind you, these men had to be somewhat fruity to be dating me, but because of my own internalized homophobia, I was attracting men that were fruity as hell, but not quite willing to admit that. They were attracted to me, but seemed to feel threatened by my masculinity and my desire for a relationship with a woman. My most recent relationship with a man lasted about a year, and it was my third unhealthy relationship with a man in a row. And a lot of the issue in that relationship was that when we matched on the dating app, his profile said he was straight. And I had been out as non binary for about a year, but I hadn't done anything to transition or explore that yet. I wasn't on HRT, I still had long hair, and I was still presenting very femme. The frustrating thing for me was that this man self identified as straight, but yet he had a chaser like sexual interest in trans women and AFAB non binary people. It felt like by identifying as straight, he was seeing all AFAB non binary people, including me, as women, and not the secret third thing that we actually are. Even after 6 months of dating me, he was still self identifying as straight and didn't feel like he was a part of the queer community. So, of course, this caused me a great deal of gender dysphoria. Hot take, you guys, regardless of your gender, if your partner is a member of the queer/trans community, then hey, buddy, you're a member of the queer community. Queerness is a culture, just like any other. For example, if you were dating someone of a different faith or ethnicity than you, then you would likely learn a lot about their faith or ethnicity by proxy of dating them. Or at least you should take the time to learn about their culture if you want to have a healthy and lasting relationship. He also had a habit of looking at multiple other people's spicy social media accounts and liking their photos publicly, and was constantly objectifying women during our relationship, which is a huge trigger for me. I felt disrespected, and my PTSD symptoms were constantly flaring up. He wanted to look at other people, but yet he wasn't okay with me dating other people. So by the time that relationship came to an end, I was so frustrated. I was like, I'm swearing off men altogether. So I'm lesbian for a while. While there are some aspects of being with a man that I enjoy, I don't want to align myself with a white man or be in a heterosexual passing relationship. It makes me feel like a hypocrite. And there's almost a sense of disappointment, like, why am I with a man again? It just goes against the fiber of my identity now, and I don't think that will ever change. I am homo-romantic leaning because I've never not been interested in women, but I've had long stretches of time where I'm not interested at all in men. So I swore off men altogether, and the bi cycle had turned to women for a whole year and a half. I had absolutely zero interest whatsoever in dating or even sleeping with a man. I was legit like, I would be fine if I never talked to a man again. The bicycle is affected by multiple different things. I recently learned about the bicycle on an episode of the Queer Collective podcast, which I'll link in the show notes because it was seriously so validating to hear other queer folks have that conversation. For me, the bicycle has been affected by internalized homophobia and by social benefits versus social stigma. It's also affected by the specific people that I'm attracted to and what I desire in my dynamic with them. And it's also affected by specific dating experiences that I've had. My whole life, I've had internalized biphobia from dating a girl and getting negative feedback from the people around me to then dating men again and getting positive feedback and acceptance, but from the wrong people, to realizing that I really don't want to live my life with a man. And at some point, I realized that if I'm getting married, I think I would want a wife or a non binary spouse. To this day, my longest relationships were those first two, with a girl for 2 years in high school and with a guy for 2 years in college. When it comes to romantic feelings, I fall deeper and harder in love for non men. And I can have deep platonic feelings and the occasional romantic feelings for men. But to me, it's not the same as falling in love with a woman or another non binary person. There is something about that shared resonance with them. As I've gotten older, my standards for men have also gotten a lot higher. I've taken steps to affirm my masculinity as a non binary AFAB person who dates women. And when you learn how to play that role, you realize that being respectful toward women that you find attractive isn't actually hard. Treating women like human beings and getting their true consent for any physical intimacy isn't actually hard. Even if somebody rejects you, you can still be respectful to them. And yeah, rejection hurts, but you know that you're not entitled to their body. So respecting their no isn't hard. When you've played that masculine role before and done it in a respectful way, you don't have much patience for the men that you date acting like it's hard or being disrespectful. I've always been a bit jealous of conventionally hot cisgender men who attract a lot of women and don't treat them well. I've had to work hard to get the attention from women that I've always desired. Truly getting to know a woman and earning her love is magical, special, and powerful. Why would you ever play with that? Why would you ever throw that away? More often than not, if I'm attracted to a man, we aren't looking for the same things in a partner or in life. And then I also feel like sometimes with women, we aren't looking for the same thing either because a lot of lesbians only want monogamy and get turned off by the fact that I like men. So, biphobia again. If you guys are relating to any of this so far, please drop a comment and let me know. I would love to hear about your experience with biphobia. My last relationship with a man ultimately ended because I'm non binary and I need to be with someone who identifies as queer, someone who chooses to live a queer lifestyle, shares my values, and is willing to stand up for my rights. For the most part, men just don't care about those things because it doesn't really affect them. So I usually end up getting the ick by men for that reason. And of course, by their general attitude and behavior. When he and I broke up, I immediately launched into my lesbian slut era. But only a month later, I matched with my ex fiance and we hit it off. My ex is another AFAB non binary person, and we considered ourselves to be in a lesbian relationship. We had known each other from childhood and we fell for each other really quickly. We had been friends in school and grew up together, but then hadn't seen each other for a decade after graduation until we reconnected on a dating app. I fell in love and fell hard. I was fully identifying as a lesbian at this point, and in true lesbian fashion, we got engaged after only 4 months of talking and connecting romantically. I know. I've only ever had a few girlfriends. Like some women that ended up breaking my heart, I don't even think they qualify as girlfriends because we were friends and we just hooked up. But I think I was the only one that actually had romantic feelings. So when I met my ex, I was just so happy to be with an AFAB person who reciprocated my feelings for once. I was so proud to be done unpacking a ton of internalized homophobia. So I'm a lesbian for a while until the bicycle turns again. One of my non negotiables in relationships moving forward is being ethically non monogamous. I've read in the bicycle enough to know that if I try to be monogamous, I'll end up asking my partner to open the relationship at some point, and that's not what they signed up for. There are plenty of poly people out there, but this is another factor that limits my dating pool. When I first matched with my ex fiance, her dating profile said she was looking for monogamy. So I tried being transparent and suggested being friends because we weren't looking for the same thing. But when we met, we hit it off right away and both started developing feelings and kind of just fell into something. And as in the case of my previous ex, whose profile said he was straight, I should have followed my original intuition, but I ignored the red flag once again. She had tried polyamory before and said she was willing to try it again because she wasn't the jealous type. And at first, I thought that they were everything I wanted in a partner. The relationship quickly blossomed into something that I genuinely felt had potential to be very serious and long term. And those first 4 months were amazing. We proposed to each other in a perfect way, and we both said yes. And I thought that I had finally found my person, and I was so happy. But there were ongoing red flags that showed her choosing her family over our relationship. I haven't been talking to my family, so there were a lot of holidays that I spent alone last year, and she would invite me to join hers, but some of her family members are very racist and homophobic, on top of being unhealthy and straight up rude. So I tried to limit spending time with them for the sake of my mental health, but she spent a lot of time with them. So when she was doing that, I continued doing what I was doing before we started dating, which was seeing other people and building my own polyfamily, and she knew going into everything that I'm polyamorous and said that she was fine with me seeing other people. At the time, she wasn't seeing other people, but she said that she may be interested in that in the future. Now, my ideal bisexual longing has been and probably will always be having one boyfriend and one girlfriend or something similar to that. Gender expansive and non-binary people too. I just am always going to want to have multiple partners. That's the lifestyle I want to live. I'm bisexual and I don't want kids, but I have a lot of love to give. So polyamory just fits for me. She never seemed to care when I hooked up with non-men as long as I communicated about it. But once I hooked up with a man and she suddenly had an issue, I'm not saying I acted perfectly in that situation. Because of my own internalized biphobia, I had shame about my desire to sleep with men, despite finally having what I thought that I had always wanted. And I allowed that shame to get in the way, and I could have been more proactive with my communication, but I didn't think it would be a problem to tell her that I hooked up with someone after the fact instead of before the fact. But that did turn out to be a problem, and I think the lack of consistent communication damaged her trust in me. Beth McCarthy is a queer musician who names a common bisexual trope in her song called Goodbye. The lyrics go, I like the boys and the girls. The girls hate girls who date boys. The boys like girls who like girls as long as they get to watch. I find this trope is totally true in my experience. What do you guys think? I find that men don't mind their female partners dating other AFAB people. And in general, that's more socially acceptable in our culture. But yet, lesbian relationships are also generally considered less valid and therefore not as threatening to a man. There are a lot of bi women out there, but statistically, for multiple reasons, they do mostly end up in heterosexual relationships. So it's true that a lot of lesbians also don't like to date people that date men because it's a common experience to get burned by a woman who leaves them for a man or treats them like an experiment. It's understandable to not want to have to compete with that social privilege that comes from dating a man. Bisexual women have more options in the dating pool, but in general, someone who identifies as a lesbian is more likely to be committed to the queer community and therefore more likely to be committed to their partner as well. I started making a lot of progress in therapy by doing EMDR, a specific modality in therapy that helps reprocess trauma and allow your nervous system to heal itself. This has thankfully resulted in a large reduction of my PTSD symptoms. I don't get triggered nearly as often as I used to. And when I do get triggered, I'm able to identify it a lot sooner and take space to re regulate myself. What my spiritual practice gives me is practical tools for nervous system regulation. What therapy gives me is a place to reflect clearly on my values, triggers, and boundaries, to identify and validate my emotions, and to learn to communicate my needs in a healthy way. I set strong boundaries with my father a few years ago and have not spoken to him in person since. I attempted to communicate with him one last time via email shortly before Christmas of last year, and he refused to communicate on terms that I felt comfortable with, which ended our relationship. In that final communication, for some reason, my father referenced a conversation that he had had with my last ex boyfriend, during which my ex told my father that he is straight. And I can't say for sure what my dad's point was, but I think he brought this up as an example of me hurting people by being bisexual, which weird of my dad to empathize with my boyfriend instead of his child in that situation. During this time, my ex fiance had apparently been feeling overwhelmed, but was not communicating with me about it. Her family is homophobic, and despite being close with them, she had struggled to secure their acceptance and belonging. Then she saw me get rejected by my father, and I think it was too much for her. On top of her already experiencing grief and anxiety about her family's potentially negative reaction to our engagement, I think that some biphobia factored into her decision to leave me, but mostly I think it was her own internalized homophobia and emotional immaturity. And then it's almost as if my father was pointing out that my ex boyfriend is straight as some kind of proof that I'm a cold-hearted person, which feels just rooted in biphobia to me. My father chose to end our relationship rather than communicate with me on terms that I'm comfortable with. And then my fiance left me suddenly and without communication just a couple of days later. We lived together, and there were many tender moments and opportunities that she could have opened up to me, but instead she shut down and started stonewalling. Now I'm almost 30 and I feel so much more like myself than I ever have before. I actually feel competent with women now. I've embraced both sides of myself, masculine and feminine, and I only accept people in my life who celebrate that about me, who don't try to push me into either side of the binary, because that's the point. I'm non binary. It's like I'm gay in every direction because I have a lot of masculine energy. So even when I'm with a guy, I feel like it's in a gay way. I was very socialized to reject my assertive masculine qualities. So for a long time, I tried to shove them down, but now I embrace them. If I'm with a guy who's treating me like a woman, or if I'm with a woman who's treating me like a woman, that causes gender dysphoria. If I'm with anyone that's treating me like a woman, the same exact thing happens. And yeah, sometimes cisgender women try to put me in that box too. I've noticed that the best dating experiences I've had have actually been with other trans or non binary people. Trans for trans relationships just feel really comfortable, and there's a shared understanding of gender dysphoria that really deepens the sense of being seen, in my experience. And a lot of trans people are also polyamorous. So it's been this whole saga of first identifying the part of myself that is very gay and wants to date women, and then denying my masculine side to try to be more palatable to men in particular. And then as I've grown more into myself and found more understanding and self love, I have really embraced my masculinity and embraced calling myself gay and lesbian. And that felt honest. And then now it's like I'm circling back around after 5 to 7 business days, realizing that I'm technically not gay and then re accepting my bisexuality. I recently found myself trying to deny having romantic feelings for a man, which I haven't felt in quite some time. While I've known for years that I am homoromantic, it is often just simply the case that there's more options for potential compatible partners for me that just happen to be men. And because of internalized biphobia and knowing that my preference is for non men, I tend to really resist those feelings, any feelings for men that come up besides sexual attraction. I'll go long stretches of time without any interest in men whatsoever, besides like the occasional hookup. But when my bicycle turns, I suddenly find myself craving that intimate connection with a man again. While men are generally not what I'm looking for in a partner, I can still acknowledge that romantic feelings for them occasionally do arise within me. A part of me wants to just decide to be gay, but a bigger part of me knows that that's not true and it's never been true, and that's okay. Any idea that that's not okay is just the biphobia talking. So I do hope that unpacking internalized biphobia and embracing my bisexual degeneracy will be the final boss of self love and self acceptance within embracing my queer identity. My attraction is more based on the person themselves rather than their body. But at the same time, I do find that my attraction fluctuates between masculine energy and feminine energy, regardless of gender. That's the bicycle, baby. All right, you guys. So, where does internalized biphobia show up in your life? Please share with us in the comments so that I don't feel so naked and exposed. Come on, you guys. Be vulnerable with me, please. I feel naked. And please comment the name of your favorite pop diva or queer icon. I'm really feeling Janelle Monáe recently. They are the bomb.com. To summarize, in this episode, I got raw and vulnerable with you guys once again about my formative relationships and early experiences with biphobic and homophobic indoctrination. Then I shared about unpacking that internalized biphobia and embracing my masculinity as a non binary person. And finally, the bi cycle came full circle as I've been integrating my bisexuality again with radical self acceptance. Now that I know the bi cycle exists, I know that I'm not crazy. And this is why bisexuality is so confusing, y'all, especially if you're my mom. People tend to dislike uncertainty and fear the unknown. So, this is my theory as to why everyone hates bisexuals. Their very existence threatens many social constructs and the fabric of patriarchy and duality. I sometimes wish I could just pick a side and stick to it, but in the wise words of Beth McCarthy, double the options, double the problems. I get what I want, and I want both sides. Double attraction means double the action. I get what I want, and I'm everyone's type. How could anybody hate a good buy? Happy Pride Month, everyone. This one goes out to all of my fellow bisexual degenerates out there. Keep making society uncomfortable. Keep fighting the good fight. Don't forget to download your free self-care resource guide and be the first to know about upcoming queer yoga retreats and events by signing up for our email newsletter on the QSA website at youareloved.one/pod. And you guys, imagine how magical it would be to do your morning yoga and meditation practice out in the open air on a sun-kissed rooftop terrace while monkeys skitter along the power lines above and cows bellow in the streets below. Here's an opportunity to immerse yourself in a soul-stirring spiritual journey through Mother India next January. From the sacred ghats of the holy city Varanasi to the tranquil serenity of Rishikesh, this vibrant yoga retreat offers a pilgrimage to the roots of yoga. Explore ancient temples, offer service at Sri Ram Ashram, and witness Vedic rituals along the Ganges River. This is not only a yoga retreat, it's a spiritual initiation. Travel has been a potent spiritual experience for me, and it is my great honor to guide others through their own spiritual travel experiences. Do you feel called to join us? Please apply on our website at youareloved.one/India-yoga-retreat. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until next time, let's stay connected and stay witchy. I'll talk to you soon, and blessed be. With all my love, Lee Davy.